Hello and welcome to another episode of Sunday Sweet Chats. My name is Charles K. Carter and I'm a queer poet from Oregon. I'm the author of several poetry collections, including The God of Loneliness from Rebel Satori Press and forthcoming Follow This Blood to Find a Dead Thing from Fernwood Press. But that's enough about me. So let's talk about our sweet guest today and discuss some sweet, sweet poetry. Hello, Luther. I'm so excited to have you here today. Would you like to introduce yourself to our audience?
Yeah, I am Luther Hughes. My pronouns are they, them. I am from Seattle, Washington, born and raised, where I'm currently living. I'm the author of the poetry collection A Shiver in the Leaves, came out in 2022 from BOA Editions, and the chapbook Touched came out in 2018 from Sibling Rivalry Press. I am the owner of a platform called Shade Literary Arts, which is for queer writers of color, publishing work by queer poets of color every first and third Thursday. We're currently open for submissions. You can for sure submit. And I have been featured in many, many places, many journals, many magazines, many newspapers across the country, internationally, and I'm happy to be here.
Thank you so much. So I always kind of start out asking people, what's your favorite sweet treat?
Yeah, so I really love cookies. I actually had a thing when I was in undergrad where I had to try every new cookie flavor from like Oreo or from like Chips Ahoy that came out. And I stopped doing that because we once tried this really disgusting flavor. It was candy apple and it was so nasty. And we stopped trying the flavors because that one just kind of triggered us. And we were like, we can't do any more of these flavor things. But I really love cookies. I used to eat them all the time. I don't have a sweet tooth as much anymore like I did when I was a little bit younger. But if I go to any sweet, it's for sure like a cookie.
Oreos, they're kind of outrageous. Like they just have like so many. There are some really great ones, but yeah, some of them are really out there, and I've been very apprehensive to try some of them.
Yeah, exactly. I would not suggest anybody just try one of them. Like buy a whole a thing of them because you just don't know what you're gonna get. But yeah, they have like crazy, crazy flavors still, and it's kind of wild that they're still doing that.
All right, so that's enough about sweet food. Let's move on to some sweet poetry. You have a poem to read for us today. Go for it.
Yeah, it's funny because I was trying to think of a poem that was like sweeter, and I feel like A Shiver in the Leaves doesn't have a lot of sweet poems. So I'm gonna actually read a new poem, new-ish poem that is not in the collection, but it was published to a magazine called Seattle Met. Um, I will read that. I can put it up. Okay, this too shall be named. What I crave is the smell of clean laundry, the blacker blacks of his Calvins. He throws steak and shrimp in the pan while I knock back another glass of Crown on ice, and I know somewhere an uncle is proud. Somewhere a hummingbird is heft and full of Seattle sugar. The candle on the table burps magnolia. On TV, Patrick proposes to David on a cliff top after an afternoon of bickering, nature, and secrets, natural sequence. I was made to love him that way, at the edge of the world, lost in the afternoon lush of the life we share, hummingbirding from nectar to nectar. What is the distance between what is and what is wished for? As he opens the fridge, light pours out into our home.
Thank you so much. That is beautiful. I love the sensory language and love the idea that love at the edge of the world. Edge of the world. It's beautiful. Edge of the world. So, what's going on with you as a poet, or what's going on in your world today?
Yeah, so I mean, it's funny. When my first book came out, A Shiver in the Leaves, and I was so deep into writing the first book for several years, maybe upwards of 10 years. So when it came out, I was kind of removed. It came out, it was accepted in 2020, so it came out 2 years after that. And so I also written the last poem for the book around the same time. I did share a poem in there at the last minute, but I was like, whatever. But the book was pretty much done. And so, we're on tour, all those things. And so for the longest time after the book was done, I was like, I don't have any poems left. I'm done. writing poems. I was like, this might be my first and last book. I was really adamant. I was like, this might be the first book I'm ever going to write. And I was like, I thought I would never write poems again. I think everyone goes through that actually. I think after the first book, I think everyone was like, oh my gosh, will I ever do this again? Um, so I was adamant about that for a good couple of years. It would be like a year and a half or two. I was like, new poems are being written right now. I feel fantastic. It's great, whatever. But of course, that ended rather abruptly. So I began writing poems a lot, a lot of poems. They kind of be flooding out of me. And me and my friends, Lucy Tejada and Gabriel Bates, also amazing poets. We have a thing where we send poems like once a week, can. And so for about a year and a half, I've been sending them poems once a week. So I've been writing like upwards of hundreds of poems for the last couple of years. Um, that's been interesting and fun. And so I guess you can say what's been going on right now with me is writing. My mom passed away in 2023. So you can imagine the poems I'm writing are kind of talking towards, grief and I'm thinking about her life when she was alive and our relationship when she was alive and how I feel about it and, being upset with her or not upset with her, things like that. And so I've been writing a lot of poems about my mother, but also about, love. And now that I'm married, writing about that and like writing about being non-binary because I came out as non-binary after She Believes came out. So that book of poems is about being a boy, being a man. So now I'm like I'm not that anymore. So like when I talk about that in these new poems, so that's kind of been like on my mind a lot, just like really, really writing and really, really thinking about identity as it relates to grief, as it relates to my mother dying, as it relates to the relationships I have built, when I identified as a man and how they are different now that I identify as non-binary. And so it's been kind of interesting and fun and also very, very strange. Um, I will say though, I took a hiatus from writing poetry for the summertime because I told myself that the summertime I'm working on a novel, and I put it in quotes because I'm not really working. I mean, I'm writing a novel, but like nobody's asking a novel of me, so I don't know who I'm writing. Like I don't know why I'm doing this. I'm doing because I write a novel, but nobody's like asking me for a novel, or I'm not pitching it to anywhere. I'm not like hounding anybody to like pick it up. But I told myself like it's a novel summer. So we're focusing on writing the novel, and that's been also really really fun. I think you write something that nobody is asking of you for it. It's a little more liberating, and I have a lot of freedom to do whatever the hell I want because one, I didn't study fiction or the novel right in school. I studied poetry. While have read many novels, love novels. Um, I don't feel pressure to follow any particular people per se or a school of fiction or of course our rules and guidelines and like how to create a story right and how to follow an arc and all those things. So I'm understanding that, following that. But I don't have any stakes in this besides being a writer, of course. Like it's the only stake I have in writing this novel. But I honestly I don't care, but it's not a form that I particularly am versed in learning or in writing. Like I've written short stories before when I was younger. Like I thought I was gonna be a novelist when I was younger. Like poetry was always on the side. I was like, oh, I'm writing short stories. I'm 12 years old writing short stories. I'm in high school writing short stories. Um, but that's been fun. Novel writing for me has been fun. I think people it's daunting or hard or like I don't know, are exhausted. I feel great. Um, I feel like I'm learning these characters, and I feel like they're teaching me things about who they are, but also teaching me about who I am. I'm enjoying writing towards a scene and then being surprised by where the characters take me, or even being surprised by where I end up taking the story itself. Um, I wrote this scene recently that I think at first I wanted it to be sort of sad and like depressing and like characters like one of the characters in the story has cancer, and so I was writing this scene, and I thought it was going to be like really this is and turns out it wasn't sad at all. It actually became a very like happy and pleasurable and joyful scene, and I didn't expect it to go that way. And I'm glad I challenged myself to do that because I think I have, I can write about depression and grief. That's the thing that I can do and I've been doing. It's not really particularly hard for me to write into that. What's hard to write into sometimes is the joy, right? Is the pleasure, is the happiness, right? So like forcing myself to move away from something that's comfortable and something that I don't typically do was fun and freeing, right? It also let me know like, oh, I can do this. I don't always have to write about grief or write a sad scene or write towards sadness. I can write towards happiness and joy and funniness. I can be funny. Like, I think I'm naturally funny. I think in writing it's hard to be funny, and so like it's hard for me to like pick up that um, kind of nature and put it into a poem. But I can um, in a story, in a novel. And I have been doing it in poems a little bit too. But like being intentional about being funny in a story, that's difficult for me. So I was glad to be able to like write towards that, write towards the discomfort of not knowing what I can do. Um, what's been going on with me? A bunch of novel writing and then these newer poems that um, have a sugar in the leaves type of like vibe, but it's not a sugar in the leaves. It's a voice that I think is a little more sure of itself. A shiver in the leaves. It's funny because looking back at the poems, or reading poems from Shiver in the Leaves, whenever I do a reading, I read like a couple of poems from the book and then I go to new stuff. Reading those old poems, I'm like, who was this? Like, what is this energy from? Like, I don't understand this energy in these poems. Like, it's such a why the poems are a lot of like self-inflicted or like very very like about violence or about like these harms both as self-inflicted also like in the world like this yearning that these poems have. I'm not familiar with that yearning anymore. They're very hungry poems. They're very poems that to me now feel a little um, I don't want to say elementary in a way that they're juvenile or that they are not smart or articulated in a way that doesn't feel based in any craft or any like knowledge or whatever. I think there are still craft driven, right, and very knowledgeable, and I think um, they're smart poems in the sense that they are doing things. I think that challenge me as a poet. But reading those poems, I'm like, I don't even think like this. Why? Why did I use this image? Or like, Why would I break this line here? That doesn't make any sense. So it feels interesting to see myself in a different way, writing these new poems and being very sure of myself. Also, still allowing myself to play and like do other things I didn't do or like surprise myself in these ways. I think they're still there. But I feel very sure. I feel very clear about where these poems are going. I feel very clear about this possible next collection, which I haven't said out loud their collection yet, but it's not nothing's formed yet. Just to be clear, I've not sat down and actually formatted anything with these poems. I'll maybe do that maybe who knows in a year or two maybe. But I have a lot of clarity around these poems. Where Shiver in the Leaves, when I was writing those poems, was there was not clarity around what the book was going. There wasn't really a strong center in the book that I landed on. I think the book talks about a lot. Things are linked together, right? There are themes and elements that are linked and tied together with certain themes. But I didn't, it doesn't have like a strong like center, core. It has all these other limbs and thoughts, and it's moving and fleeting. And so these poems are interesting because I know I know what I'm writing towards and writing about, and that feels like a different level of energy that I gave for Shipment. Even touch, like those sort of are closely connected, given the content matter. Um, but touch also, like while touch has a core theme, touch is also just like some things are happening here. Um, that's been going on. A lot of that.
Awesome to hear. Yeah, I think it's really interesting to hear you talk about how like you almost feel like a different person looking at your past work. And sometimes it's even just in the matter of a year or so. Um, and sometimes it can happen even in the process of just waiting for the book to be published. Um, my book that's about to come out later on this year, Follow This Flood to Find a Dead Thing, actually was finished before my book that came out before this one. So it's kind of interesting that like my most recent one I finished writing came out before the one that's about to come out. So like publishing and the timelines of stuff, yeah, that can happen too. Um, I also really related to what you were saying about like writing lighthearted stuff. I mean, I think a lot of us, it's really hard to write about that. And it's really hard to instill a sense of humor, yeah, especially in poetry. I think that's really hard. I find it really hard to write a love poem and not sound like a freaking Hallmark card. It's really hard to instill that joy and that lightness. So yeah, it's really interesting to hear you working on other things. And I appreciate hearing you working on like a novel and not feeling the pressure and just kind of doing that for you and just to try something new. Um, I haven't really told anybody this, but I've been very hyper productive with my poetry. And I think between like just being so hyperproductive and trying to put it out there and the publication process and submission and the rejection and all of that, I'm kind of getting burnt out with it. And
Mm,
I'm kind of at the phase where I'm kind of like, I might try and step back a little and switch gears and try something different, whether that is, I've kind of been entertaining the idea of maybe writing essays or a novel, or maybe even I used to love to draw and paint in high school, maybe trying to take some lessons and do that, but not trying to like put it out there or do anything with it, just do it for me. So I think like there's some value and importance in switching gears and, doing something for you instead of always trying to put it out there.
yeah, I agree with that. I think I wholeheartedly understand, connect with the, taking a step back from capital P poetry and the business of poetry. It's daunting sometimes and it's exhausting sometimes. There, I can tell myself with these new poems, like, you don't have to send these poems out to anywhere. Like they've been getting published, but like I told myself, like I'm just gonna send the poems from September to May. After that, they'll like from May to August, don't submit anywhere. And I feel like telling myself that was like, yeah, like I don't. There's no need for the hustle and bustle. There's times where I need, as a poet, to just sit and focus on my life or focus on other things so the poems can happen. So the business of poetry can actually resume once I'm ready for it. But I think a lot of times the culture has been, or the culture is, right? So always send out work, always step into business of poetry, always do all these things. And I I wish I was told, or maybe I wasn't, I didn't even listen. Like when you're younger, like who knows what people tell you when you're a younger poet. But I wish I was told if I wasn't told, like you can stop at any point in time. Um, there's no need to exhaust yourself for the business of poetry. And for poetry itself, you don't need to exhaust yourself to write a poem. And so that's been interesting to also realize as well with these new poems, like the shift. Like I don't need to send out 100 poems to thousands of presses every 2 weeks. Like who? It does nobody no service.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I think I know for me, I've never been like the poet to like, I have to write every day or I have to have like a super discipline. Like I always had that kind of live and game, live and observe type of period. And then I write. But I know I've been in a lot longer of a observe and I'm writing a lot less, period. Um, But yeah, I appreciate you giving that advice and, the advice you wish you heard, or maybe, like you said, maybe you heard it, but you weren't ready to hear it. I think that happens a lot in life where we hear things and it sounds too cliche or we're just not ready to hear it, so we don't accept it until we're ready to. I think
Yes.
that happens a lot in life. All right. I think that's a good way to segue into my final question for you today. Um, our world is very, very messy and overwhelming and oftentimes very triggering, very negative, very salty. So what do you do as an individual to keep yourself sweet?
Yeah. I love this question because it kind of aligns with kind of what I've been trying to do in my life recently, which is like being more intentional about stuff. And so it's funny because I'm actually, when it comes to poetry, I'm very intentional. I'm a very intentional poet. So I don't understand why I didn't apply this to my life. But um, just being intentional about spaces that I'm in, being intentional about, things with my husband, being intentional about friendships and family sometimes when I can hear it, being intentional about, being loving or showing up and understanding what love looks like. Um, and really understanding that um, the things that really give me sort of a happiness and things that I can allow myself to feel sweet, to keep myself sweet, is connection with like people. Um, as I'm actually a very strong introvert, and for the longest time, I thought my introvertedness meant I didn't care for connection with people, right? Because the stereotype is that introverts don't like people, right? And whenever anybody wants to be at home all day, all these types of things. And for the longest time, I thought I had a kind of a knee jerk and disgusting reaction to the idea of being around a lot of people. But as I'm working on myself mentally, for sure, going to therapy and talking about these social anxieties and talking about, all these things and, medication for social anxiety, right? And for general anxiety, like having these actual things diagnosed and realizing like, okay, no, it's actually not that I'm, it's not that my introvertedness made me feel this way. It was my anxiety making me feel this way. And so now that I'm have worked on that and working on it continually and being on medication, all those things, now there's an openness to understanding connection. And now I'm like, oh, do like I actually do like people. I actually do like want to be around friends. Like I actually when I don't see it like my best friend after a while, I'm like, what? Something's missing. I don't know what's going on. And I'm realizing, oh, it's just my best friend. I've been hung out with her in a long time. Or like, wow, I do want to hang out with other people and maybe go to a bar and just kind of like shoot the shit. Like those things I'm allowing myself to lean more into because I'm realizing that's what gives me sort of the sweetness about life or sweetness about seeing the world, right? And I think a lot of times, as a poet myself, I tend to think that the poem sometimes comes from kind of this like opening up and then closing back in to work on the poem versus like staying open. The poem will come if you're open to the world as well. So that's been giving me some sweetness. That's been like, being intentional about leaning in has been really pleasurable. And I find myself happier day to day when thinking about these types of things. So that keeps me sweet. That's keeping me sweet. I'm really happy about that. Yeah, really sweet about that.
Thank you so much for sharing that. Yeah, I'm an introvert too, but yeah, connection is super important. We all need it. Comes with healthy boundaries and stuff like that, but we're social beings. We need each other, whether we like it or not.
Exactly. Whether we like it or not, we have to connect with people.
Thank you so much for being here, Luther. I appreciate you. I appreciate your work. I appreciate your time. Thank you. Thank you.
I appreciate you.
All right. It's been such a sweet treat to have you. Thanks for tuning in, everyone, to Sunday Sweet Chats. Catch another episode next Sunday. See you later.